Welcome back. This time on the Horsepower Monster, we're starting a new project, and you want to hang around for this. We're taking this old heap and turning it into one of the greatest inventions of mankind, a race car. If you've watched many Horsepower Monster videos, then you've probably seen our friend Keith Newcomer and his incredible builds through his company, Newcomer Racing. Keith specializes in making power in Jeep straight six engines, and together we've done such varying builds as low buck strokers that made over 300 reliable horsepower thanks to intelligent part selection. And on the other end of the spectrum, there's an absolutely insane big turbo straight six that we're pretty sure holds the world record for horsepower in a Jeep or AMC straight six with an incredible 861.3 horsepower. At least we couldn't find any Jeep engine that had made more power previously, and nobody has stepped up with a bigger number since then. Anyhow, when Keith called to let us know he was building a new car to go nostalgia drag racing, we knew we had to get in on it. Of course, we're starting with a donor car that's about as far from a race car as you can get. A 1966 AMC Rambler American. Why this car? Well, I'll just let Keith explain it.
We got a little gem right here. It says 1966 Rambler American 440, and it's only got 34,000 original miles, believe it or not. And decided I wanted to finally race, and damn it. You go on now. Oh God. Come on. Come on. She likes to shop.
Keith's going to kill me for leaving that in. But besides building engines, he and his wife also raise chickens, which seem to be more like pets than livestock. And you'll probably end up hearing them in the background in future shots. Plus, I'm still mystified by whatever this thing is.
Okay.
Anyhow.
So yeah, we've been, like me and Devin that works there, we've been wanting one of these for a long time. I've been wanting something that we could put one of our motors in and go play around or, go race. And I like stick cars, and I've looked at, like Gear Jammers and stuff like that series, and then kind of fell upon the Southeast Gasser series. And it seems like a pretty cool series. It's all heads up, and this is a good candidate. It comes with like the beginning stages of one of the AMC/Jeep motors. It's illegal in this, so that's what we're going to try to do. See if we can go race, use some of our motors, test parts, and probably even do other things. I'd like to do like a drag and drive event and slap a turbo on it, because we all know we've made some pretty good power with this. See if we can make 900,000 horsepower, see what it takes.
AMC's Rambler American was only produced between 1958 and 1969. At the time, it was considered a compact car and fairly low priced, with a base model sticker at right around $2,500. And although it was available with a V8 in later years, this 66 model came with the tiny 199 cubic inch straight six. It was always practically gutless with a minuscule carburetor and very small cam. But incredibly, it shares the same mechanical heritage as the famous Jeep 4-liter straight six that was in production all the way into the early 2000s. In fact, we may even end up using the stock crank out of the engine because of its short stroke. So tell us about the build plan here.
All right, so the build plan is to take this unmolested, believe it or not, we started stripping some of the interior, 34,000 mile original car, and try to go stick racing with it. Heads up, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to take out the 199, the automatic, strip enough, to where it makes sense, add a roll cage, and it's going to get a depending on weight. That's what we got to figure out. And I'm new to this, so we're going to kind of roll into it and see where we end up. But it's going to be in that 250 cubic inch to 300 cubic inch max, first 6-cylinder. And it's going to have a 4-speed. We've got a G-force we're going to put in it. We're going to put a 9-inch Ford in it and throw some gear at it and see what it does. And it's got to have, there's no compression rule. It's just, for this class, it's 10 pounds per cubic inch. So if we're a 250-inch motor, it's going to have to weigh 2,500 pounds with my fat butt in it. And there's little things like if you've got if you want to run an aluminum head, it's a 50-pound penalty, which we might do that. We've got options for that. No compression rule, no cam rule, nothing like that. No exhaust rule, no gear rule. It's pretty open, and it just lets you try a lot of things. There's some things like you can't angle mill heads and stuff like that. You can't raise ports. It's got to be within a casting. There's a lot of little things, but for the most part, it's pretty generous, and that's we're going to see what we can do. I have an idea of what times we're going to need to run, what horsepower we're going to need to make. So there's a bunch of options.
So for the fun of it, last week we met up at the dyno, and just to dyno the stock motor. And how did we do?
Yeah, we did great. I tell you, I was amazed. Like, I mean, this is original as it gets. Like, just, I know you've looked at it. I'll pop the hood again. But that is original. And we put it on the dyno, and the air fuels were spot on. We took the air filter out, and it started leaning out, and it started making a little bit more power. We took some timing out of it. It actually made more power. It got to around 3,800, and we all got scared, and I let out of it because it was making noise.
These shots go back about a week in time when Keith brought his Rambler to CES Motorsports to have owner John Cushell put it on their chassis dyno and see how much power the 57-year-old car was putting to the ground. Now, CES specializes in modern performance BMW and Toyota super builds and regularly churns out some ridiculous cars. So this was a fun little break for them too. Guesses on peak power around the shop ranged from anywhere between 75 horsepower all the way up to 140 or so. And as a side note, this engine actually runs pretty well. After just a minimum of work, Keith had it firing up right off the hit and idling smoothly. It was, however, so mellow and low power that it practically makes no noise. And all the gaskets are totally dried out, so it leaked fuel and oil just about all over the place. And yes, we did actually run it on the dyno with the original hubcaps still in place. So, here we go. And this is legitimately how long it took our Rambler American to get to 4,000 RPM and approximately 100 miles per hour worth of wheel speed. And the result? 65.97 horsepower at just 3,800 RPM. So, we set the record for the lowest horsepower ever produced on CES's chassis dyno. But of course, being racers, we couldn't leave well enough alone, even though we had no use for this engine. Still, we decided to see if we could make any more power by pulling off the air cleaner. You know, in the name of science. And do you hear that squealing sound right before the end of the run? It may sound a little bit like belt slip on camera, but that's not what it was. We never did figure out what exactly was making that squeal, but it made me not want to stand near the engine during the pulls anymore. And without the air cleaner in place, we made a whopping extra 1.3 horsepower, which will blow your hair back, with a total of 67.38 horses. Just a fun little trip, but now it's time to get back to work building a race car.
So, of course, since this is a horsepower monster and excess is the way we try to do everything, an engine build is going to be in this car's future, and we'll cover that. But what is the goal for what we're working on tonight?
Well, tonight we're gonna get a weight of kind of where it's at, and we've taken some of the basic interior parts out, but we're gonna start stripping this puppy and see where it's at. All cast iron motor, even the fuel lines are about cast iron on this thing. We're gonna take it out, the transmission, everything besides the rear end, just so it can roll. And once we get that all out, we're going to weigh it again. So we're going to get a weight before and after, and then we'll kind of calculate kind of where we think we're going to be, and then we'll build a motor based on cubic inches and weight.
Honestly, barely 2,400 pounds is surprisingly light for a piece of 60s era American iron, even if it was considered a compact chassis. Now, the interior's already been stripped out of the car, but we didn't realize until later that we had forgotten and actually left the spare tire in the trunk. So, unless Keith wants to add a lot of lead, he'll have to limit the cubic inches of his race engine build to stay within the rules of 1 cubic inch for every 10 pounds of total vehicle weight. So, as soon as the car was back on the ground and off the scales, we started ripping into the engine. Oh, and check out how small the drum brakes on the front wheels are. We never put the Rambler on the road because Keith blew out the rear brake lines trying to do a burnout. That just left us with these front drums, and nobody wanted to trust these at more than 15 miles an hour or so. Anyhow, once we got down to it, the simplicity of this 66 made pulling the engine pretty easy. Except one area where we did have a little trouble was the connection between the drive shaft and rear end. Normally, all you have to do is unbolt the U-joints, which is a piece of cake. But this setup is a little bit different.
So this is interesting. This, again, is a 66 Rambler, and this is the first time I've gotten underneath the car. Devin here was going to take the drive shaft out and ran into an issue because this ain't normal.
No, that's not. And it's tight too.
What size rear end is this?
Big.
Okay. It's not going to stay in the car though, right?
No.
Okay.
Stop your hand, whatever that is.
And check out this massive exhaust pipe for the little motor. All right, go here, look on it.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening.
Fortunately, we did have the very specific Rambler drive shaft removal tool that we needed, otherwise known as a reciprocating saw. There's no way we were reusing that drive shaft anyway. And it turns out the drive shaft removal tool is also handy for old exhaust pipes too. With the engine out, you can also see the 3-speed BorgWarner automatic that's made it to it. And check out that odd fuel pump. It's actually got 2 stages. One pumps fuel and the other provides vacuum to, I think it was the brakes maybe.
All right, that wasn't as bad as you thought, was it?
No, this wasn't bad at all. I thought we'd be here half the night, but an hour and a half into it, and it's out. It all looked good. We drove it in here, quiet as a mouse, and all original. And so now we're going to finish taking a few more things out. Evan's taking the fuel tank out, we'll get it back down on the ground, stick the hood back on it, and see where we're at on weight, and figure out what we're going to do for motor for cubic inches.
Right at 900 pounds off the car with the engine, transmission, and fuel tank. Oh, and the spare tire that we found in the trunk. This car is surprisingly light. But next time around, we'll start adding weight back with an updated race suspension and maybe start the engine build. Anyhow, thanks for watching the Horsepower Monster, and make sure to tune back in as we really get moving with the race build of this Rambler American.